Hello and welcome to This Woman's Work, a space where you can hear and read about some amazing women, the fantastic jobs they do and the paths that have led them to where they are today. So I am here today in the most beautiful setting, which hopefully is going to come out on camera, but we'll have to see, with Marie Helen. Hi.
Hello.
Could you tell the listener/viewer what it is you do for a living?
So, this week, because it does change, I am an ADHD coach and I work with teens and I work with adults. I have also and am open to going into schools and advocating really for teenagers with ADHD, because there's a lot of misunderstanding still. Even when children are diagnosed, there's still a lot of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And I'm a belief coder facilitator, which is a fairly new modality, but that sort of does what it says on the tin, and it addresses beliefs that we all have that are negative, that our subconscious has produced in response to a particular situation in time. A lot of it's from childhood, and we internalise it and we think it's our personality, and it's not actually. And that's the sort of thing that means we get triggered, or we have low self-worth or low self-belief, lack of confidence. So the belief coding process rectifies that.
And I'm guessing that's come almost as a result of the ADHD stuff as well, hasn't it? It's almost been a natural kind of...
It is a progression.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of overview of what I do.
Which obviously we've got to go loads more into.
Uh-huh.
But before we do, we track back
mm-hmm.
and we talk about little Marie Helen.
Mm-hmm.
What were you like? Obviously, this is going to be your story is going to be intrinsically linked throughout.
Yeah.
But what were you like? What were you into? What?
So I didn't know I had ADHD because I was only diagnosed age 49. So I was good at school, found academic achievement quite, I took it in my stride. That wasn't an issue. However, I often got pulled up for spelling and making silly mistakes, which is quite common with people with ADHD.
Right.
And I would do things like lessons that I found boring. I would do things like hide my school books in my bag and say that I'd forgotten them so that I could work without really applying myself in the lesson.
Oh, clever though. There's an element of cleverness to that though, isn't there?
And then do it at home listening to music, write it up neatly, listening to music. I don't know. It's funny the things that you just instinctively
learn to create, coping mechanisms.
Yeah, coping mechanisms. It's just the ADHD really. And in terms of like my diagnosis is combined in terms of hyperactivity and inattention, but this happens where I go, I've like having like 5 different thoughts in my head at the same time. But so in terms of the hyperactivity, I wasn't a child that was bouncing off the walls, which is like the stereotypical view, I suppose, because it was combined. But I would do things like pretend I had music lessons when I didn't, because it meant I could leave the classroom and go walking around. It was actually on another site because there were 2 schools on one site, and I'd walk over to the school, have a little wander around and come back again.
So you tell your teacher
I'm going for a music lesson. I could do that like with every lesson I had on my music lesson day.
Did you have music lessons?
I did have the music lesson.
Oh, okay. But, you hadn't completely fabricated.
No, but I just
didn't have them then.
No. But the thing is, I never got pulled up on anything because I was a good girl.
Yes. So no one questioned you?
Nobody ever questioned me on anything. And then when I got to college, which is often that transition for people with ADHD is often an issue, and the freedom, I didn't really cope with that, and kind of went a little bit off the rails really, because I'd also moved house, so social situations were my priority.
Yeah.
And making friends and feeling like I fitted in. And which is an issue for people with ADHD, because quite often people feel like you're on the periphery of everybody else, even when you're with good friends. You feel somehow that you're on the outside,
a bit just disconnected.
Yeah, and that's without knowing that you are ADHD. It's just that sort of inherent feeling. And the really interesting thing is you think everybody else is the same. It's just that they manage it differently. So when you get, well, this relates to me, and it's related to my clients as well. I'm not presuming to speak for everybody with ADHD, but that aha moment when you realise that feeling is part of your ADHD experience, it's quite mind-blowing.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah.
Right, so you've gone from being at school and coming up with what I think are really quite smart. Looking back on that, they're quite smart. It's you going, this is how I want my day to go.
But you know what? I think it's just like, I don't think it's that conscious, it's just a need. So there's the need to move, and there's the boredom factor. If you're not lit up by something, ADHD is interest driven. So if you're not finding something interesting, it's just a real effort.
And it really gets you physically down?
You just don't do it. There's just a block.
There's no
doing
option.
it. Yeah,
you're just not going to do it.
So, for example, I had some filing that I needed to do that I brought into this room. I've had it here all week and I've not done it, and it was only this morning, because I knew you were coming, that I did it. It took 20 minutes. And yet it's been there on the back of my mind all week to do.
Yeah.
It took me 20 minutes, but it's because I knew that you were coming, so I had to clear the space.
So in some respects, really, like, deadlines are quite good for you,
Deadlines are really, that's a coaching strategy, to try and impose deadlines on yourself. And if you need to advocate for yourself, that's something that other people can support you with as well.
Yeah.
But obviously you can't completely trick yourself, because if you try and set a deadline, it's not actually a deadline, then it's not going to work.
Yeah. Okay, so that was school then. Mm-hmm. College, where did you go?
College was a bit of a disaster, really. I scraped, I didn't achieve what I could have achieved. That's a common story, because my focus wasn't on
And also
academic.
It's a bit more relaxed, isn't it,
it's
college?
More relaxed,
so you also had a bit more freedom, which you probably then really took.
And the choices of subjects, the subjects I chose were an unusual combination. So I had English, maths and economics, so it was unusual to have like a mix of arts and the maths and actually the maths didn't go down very well, because it was just, there was no I need the understanding of why I'm doing something. I can't just learn something for the sake of learning it. That was my experience with the maths. But then went to university. I had a year off because that was because I didn't get the grades. I could have gone to somewhere that I'd wanted to go to, which was a journalism school, but they phoned me up.
What were you thinking at this point then? What were you thinking you might want to do?
So I'd wanted to go to Stirling, and I think it was, I can't really remember now. I think possibly journalism.
So you were thinking you might want to go into media in some respect?
Yeah.
Okay.
And but I had a year off anyway, and that was quite an impulsive decision. And then went to uni, and impulsively decided to have my second year off at uni, because I'd met a family on holiday who were looking for an au pair. So I went to Switzerland for a year. While I was there, changed my degree. Now looking back, there's so many indicators of an ADHD, chaotic, impulsive, not thinking things through, always wanting something different, always wanting to be different.
Yes.
Oh
my gosh. So hang on. So what was your degree course? Your first one then? Was it journalism or?
No. So I started off humanities, which was English and media studies.
Okay.
But then switched to a course that included international relations, because I don't quite know why. Because I'd done it as a subsidiary subject in year one and done well.
So you did this switch in Switzerland?
Yeah, so I had to write an essay and, to prove that I was not just plucking it out of thin air. Yeah, and then that was quite an unhappy experience in Switzerland, and I came home on holiday and didn't go back then, but then went into my second and third year at uni.
Yeah. Stuck it out?
I did, yeah. all came together in the final year, I think, because there's that pressure.
Yeah, the deadline. Yeah.
So I did literally, back in those days, because I'm so old, so I'm 52, I just started to use a computer. But when I did my dissertation, I think when I showed my tutor drafts, I literally had I worked with paper where everything was printed out, and then I obviously hadn't learned how to do cut and paste on the computer, so I literally used scissors and glue
to just put it together.
Yeah.
Wow, brilliant.
My tutor suggested I might want to learn how to use. I think I used a typewriter. I'd had electric typewriter. I don't know. I can't remember now. But I just remember that I did cut and paste. Yeah.
But okay, so left uni,
left uni, yeah, I got 2-1. I got first in my dissertation, so that was all good because it was something I was passionate about. That was human rights, and I was passionate about that. So, one of the subjects that I hated, didn't understand, again, critical theory, that just sort of went over my head, and I did really badly in that. But as a degree, I did well. Decided I started a PhD, which is just ridiculous, just totally ridiculous.
So I thought, I'm not quite ready for the working world right now.
Well, I did work at the same time, and that's why it didn't work really, because you need to dedicate yourself. And then teaching seemed to be the obvious route.
Right.
And started on I wanted to do primary teaching. I was too late to do that, so I went into middle school teaching.
And did you I'm guessing you had to do a top up?
No, so it was a PGCE, so
right,
I did, so I
went
to study that. So I did it at middle school. First practical experience I had was with secondary children, which scared me to death, but I really loved that thrill of it, and I was so proud of myself, and I felt like I connected with them. So then I asked to change my PGCE to secondary.
Right.
So did that. My dad died towards the end, so I didn't, there was one assignment that I didn't do, but I passed that, and then went into English teaching.
Wow. And at this point, had you left the kind of, that sort of research and wanting to kind of help people? You kind of left that a little bit behind? And
well, not really, because I was 6 months into the English teaching, and then I went to a special school.
Right, okay.
And that's kind of been my journey in a higgledy-piggledy kind of way, ongoing teaching, swapping out English teaching to special needs teaching, to supporting within schools, and combining, being pregnant and raising children. So I've got 3 children, and I took the opportunity to train as a dyslexia assessor while I was teaching English.
So at this point now, you are an English teacher in a special needs...
No, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
So I worked in a special school for, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years, but it had different units. So
not just an English teacher?
No, as a special needs, because it was like pre-formal.
No, that was me that time.
No, it was me not explaining it. Pre-formal curriculum.
Right.
So children with, with significant learning and physical needs as well.
And at this point, you're what, sort of mid to late 20s?
Yeah, probably late 20s.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Birmingham with my husband's job, and that's when I got a job as an English teacher, but studied to be a dyslexia assessor and teacher at the same time.
Right.
And the SENCO training as well, which is Special Education Needs Coordinator in schools. So I did that training.
So you weren't teaching day to day at this point?
I started and then handed my notice in.
Birmingham?
Yeah, but the head teacher saw potential in me and kind of created a role where I could work with kids in the way that I wanted to, the kids who were struggling with school. And it reached a point where I think I had something pop up on Facebook about ADHD, and I thought, oh my gosh, that was me. And I went to I sort of starting to feel sort of mental health, my mental health was beginning to be impacted. 3 children, continually never settled at work, never feeling confident in what I did, even though I'd always gone over and above what I was doing. You probably had
great feedback.
Yeah, lots of, and it just doesn't make any difference. You know, people can say whatever, you know, they can praise you, they can, you know, value you, but if you don't feel it yourself, it just doesn't cut, it just doesn't land. And then I'd started my first full-time job since having children, and as part of that, so responsible for special needs in a school, and I knew that there was need to get my head around ADHD, because I knew that there were children that were really struggling in school and that the school didn't know how to support them. So I went on some training, and it was supposed to be general training for Senkos about ADHD. That's what I thought it was. But when I got there, it was about girls and ADHD.
Oh.
So the particular student I had in mind was a boy, so I was like a bit, okay. But from the moment, it was Tony from the ADHD Foundation who delivered the training, and from the moment he started speaking, my mouth just dropped open, and I'm thinking, why is he talking about things that everybody does? This is like normal stuff. Why is he talking about it?
Why is he putting a label on it? Yeah.
And so I just spent the whole day, you know, sort of trying to participate in the activities and everything, but just in a state of shock, because everything I was hearing was me.
Right.
And
I guess he wasn't doing that presentation to people that might have it. He was doing it so that you could support people.
But I find this myself as well, when you know, it's inevitable that there's going to be people in the audience that connect. And I did speak to him, and then I sort of backtracked, really. I was a little bit scared with it, and then my mental health dipped to a crisis point, I would say. And so I went online, I looked at one of the checklists, and I went through it. I think there was something like 45 different symptoms in women, and I ticked them all. So for my birthday, I booked myself an ADHD assessment, and within 3 months I was diagnosed and on medication.
So where did you have to go for the assessment?
So it was online.
Right.
I did mine through the ADHD centre. It's the actual assessment wasn't that expensive, but then you have the top up of paying for the medication and having to have reviews until it's like reaches a sort of plateau that you're comfortable with in terms of medication.
And I guess is it similar? Apologies if I'm going to talk very candidly now, but is it quite similar to something like sort of anxiety and depression, whereby you've got to get the right tablets for you and the right dose, and it's a bit trial and error in some respects.
There's the side effects and there's the correct dose, and you have to increase it incrementally, because otherwise I think there's issues with heart maybe, or blood pressure, I'm not quite sure. But I know the first time I had the tablets arrived at school actually, and because it was via courier, and I was just so desperate to have them. I couldn't wait for them to be at home. And I don't know if it's placebo, but the first tablet I took, I literally felt as if somebody had got a windscreen wiper to my eyes, and everything just looked clearer.
How quickly? Really, what are we talking?
Like immediately. So it's probably placebo. I don't know. It didn't. Whether it's because you only go from that state of not having it to having it like once, so I only ever noticed that one time.
Course.
But I ended up being a fairly substantial dose, and then kind of felt I'd
like the weight, the thing just lifted a little bit, or
it did help me. It gave me headspace, is what I'd say. It sort of cleared a space in my brain to be able to think properly. And it was COVID. I was in school a lot because I was responsible for the children with special needs and the stuff that was supporting them. So I was in nearly every day, and that was fairly stressful. And there was so much I wanted to do in my job. I I would hyperfocus, which is one of the benefits of ADHD, except I was taking it to extreme levels.
Right.
And I worked all the way through the summer, and my 11-year-old then came up to me and said, "Mum, why are you working? It's the holidays." And that was by the end of the summer holidays, and I realised I'm never going to be able to do all the things that I want to do, because that perfectionism is a massive thing with ADHD as well. And, proving yourself. And so I think the medication allowed me to make the decision to leave.
Right.
And to set up on my own.
Yeah.
And people say you're brave or whatever. Well, I wasn't brave. I just knew that that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
And there was a premises 5 doors away from where I live. There was a little shop unit, and so I found out who the owner was and moved in there, put a sign up, and people came to me because it was like an ideal spot.
Okay.
And that was to support children with additional needs, where parents didn't feel they were getting the support they needed through school.
So yes, you'd opened.
So I opened the shop,
premises.
Yeah, and I had lots of customers. Asking for money for what I did was really hard. That was a really hard thing. You know, coming from working in schools, we obviously have a salary, and it was just a very difficult thing for me to get my head around.
And were people were coming though,
yeah,
knowing they were going to pay.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, the issue was mine. And I did therapeutic work as well with children, and definitely the demand was definitely there, and I loved it, but doing dyslexia reports was not good for my neurodivergent brain, because I would over test, as in I really wanted to get to the bottom of what children's issues were, so I went overboard on the testing. So I would look at language as well as the literacy and the phonics and the processing and the memory. The cognitive ability, I would go over and above, and so that had a knock-on effect that when it came to writing reports,
there was too much stuff.
It was just
too
huge,
much.
and then on top of that, so I'm constantly becoming more aware of how my brain works, and I learnt through that process that I can't just go from A to Z. So when I was writing a report, I'd write a draft out, and during that process of writing out the report, my views would sort of come together about what the child's challenges were.
Yeah.
And so then I'd have to go back and start the report again, because that new insight would need to be threaded through.
Yes.
So I wouldn't just write one of these bumper reports once. I would do it at least twice, sometimes 3 times, plus the proofreading, and it was just too much. It was just too much for me. So I switched to the coaching. I'd had coaching in my role within the school, and that was the first time I'd come across coaching, and I really liked it.
Okay.
Obviously I'd known about therapy and counselling, but I really liked the coaching's quite empowering, and it's forward thinking as opposed to it's like goal setting and reviewing and dissecting what's getting in your way and sort of reconstructing your approach to things, and that works really well for me, and I wondered if it was something that you could do with children, and I found an amazing course. There's not many courses, but I found an amazing course in America with Dr. Leah Mazzola, who is like my hero, and she turned her life around, and she set up this institute which is about reaching as many people as possible who can work with kids internationally.
But at this point, were you thinking about it? So you were thinking about it. So how long were you on your own doing what you were doing? So sort of the assessments and the special needs?
So about just less than a year when I started my training. So I carried on doing that stuff while I was training.
But you were kind of doing it self-employed, whilst training.
Training and coaching, which was often like at 1 o'clock in the morning because it was in America. When people seek diagnosis, and for children in particular, if they get one diagnosis, and it's such a battle to get it often for families, 2 years, and and they can. I had recently a 7-year-old who'd gone down the ADHD diagnostic route and then got to a certain point and then been told, well, no, we think it's probably autism, so you need to start again on a different track.
Oh my gosh.
So,
and this was all through, is this through the NHS or is this all private?
Yeah, this is NHS, So what am I saying? I'm saying that sometimes I think people get one label and they think, oh, good, I can understand myself or my child now. But there might be another. But, the effort of going through that, or, the emotional demands on sort of, I wish there was just a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Where people's uniqueness
you walk
just
in
got
as
identified.
You. Yeah, you walk in as you. But then that's the same with anything, isn't it? Mental or physical. It's like, treat me as me, don't try and put me in a box. Me as me.
Yeah. Parents are scared of having their child having the label sometimes. Sometimes they're desperate for it, because they think it's going to get them support. It doesn't always, but that's another thing I didn't go back to when I was talking about how schools help kids.
Yes.
That
so once they've been diagnosed,
it's helping them accept themselves, I think, and there's certain things. So if I did a list for schools, it would include things like not using direct instructions, because children can have slightly autistic pathological demand avoidance approach to instructions. So if you get told to do something, even if you were just about to do it, it's not happening.
Oh, interesting. That was a real thing with my ex. Again, I'm probably not going to include this, because I used to think, because he was so easily distracted, it was really hard to communicate, and he was, do you know what I mean? I could tell he wasn't there, and I'd be trying to, we've got children, you should do something. I adapted to try and be I'd try and give him very specific instructions. I'd say something, check he understood it, say something, check he understood it. But yet 9 times out of 10, he still wouldn't do the thing.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I just want you to do the thing. I don't want you to do any more than the thing, any less than the thing. Just do that thing.
Yeah. So it's really subtle. All you need to say is have it as a suggestion. Do you want to? Or maybe this is something you might want to. But just being told to do something,
Or asked.
I remember. Well, I don't know if it's the judgment thing coming in again.
Yeah. Because what happens if you don't quite do it right?
Because not even that. It's just so I'll give an example, and this is no big deal, but for some reason it sticks in my mind. So I learnt to play the piano when I was younger, and practicing the piano was boring, so I didn't want to do it. And I just remember once I was just about to go and practice the piano, and my mum came in and said, "You need to practice the piano." So I went and sat at the piano and I didn't play any. I just banged out on the keyboard. I wasn't doing anything that I was supposed to do, because I just remember that instant. I was not going to do something that I've been told to do.
Yeah.
So in terms of relationships, that can be
I'll be honest, I've been on the receiving end.
I can see how that would.
Well, I think it's more because you're trying to adapt it from a communication point of view. It's, okay, so you're not going to listen to me. I'm not going to be able to hold your attention. So you're not. I get that. I've acknowledged that now.
Yeah.
So now I'm trying something else to get you to kind of help me and work with me.
No, it is.
And even then, you're still not doing it. So I'm there going, right, I don't know what to do now. Yeah. What's the next step from now? And to be honest, that's as far as it ever got. I never got to know what the next step was.
Yeah. I was working with coaching with a child who gave me the example, they got into bother in the classroom because they dropped a pen and they were just about to pick it up, and the teacher told them to pick it up even though they were just about to do it. And so that was that became a source of conflict, something so little, and then that child, it all escalates, and then that child's seen as being really defiant or lacking cooperation.
But what is the term solution is the wrong term, so please don't take that. But what is the solution to that? Because obviously we could talk for hours about this, and I think I'm probably going to come back and we will talk for hours about it. So one thing is getting diagnosed. There's obviously then we've discussed to a degree medication, which, like you've said, can work, doesn't work, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. What else is there though? Because obviously you've got all these children, adults that need something.
So people around them to to try and just be aware of the shame issue and not to trigger that, I would say. Coaching, and you can do self-coaching, you know, if you have some sessions coaching, you get into the swing of it, of what it is, and it's like noticing what an issue is, what a problem, something you get stuck on, something you don't do effectively, and just deconstructing, taking away the layers, looking at the triggers, looking at the barriers, and reprogramming yourself, and using whatever it is that motivates you, whether it's, you know, a bigger goal, whether it's some immediate reward, whether it's using strategies like, you know, the food that you eat, because like protein, for instance, helps you concentrate, whether it's building in strategies that are going to support you in supporting yourself, so like exercise.
Yes.
Because that buys you time when your brain's more regulated. So there's 3 types of ADHD.
Yeah.
There's the hyperactive and impulsive, that's the one, and then there's inattentive ADHD, and that's often what women who are diagnosed as adults predominantly experience. There's the combined as well, and the hyperactivity, if you can be, so for me, I am a little bit of a fidgeter, and I do find it hard to sit still for long. I'd have to be doing something, even if I'm sitting on my laptop or
on your phone, or
I'd have to be doing something.
Yeah.
But I'm not like somebody who has to go for a run all the time.
No.
Unfortunately, I wish I was.
But your brain has got to be active.
But my brain is constant. So it's like, so for women and girls, it can be like hyperactivity of the brain.
Yeah.
And so there's all the overthinking, all the ruminating, all the lots of different ideas, all the second guessing, all the wondering about how people are perceiving you and what they're thinking about you. So I can't remember why we were talking about that. But
no, okay, so the second one then, which was the inattentive. What does that present itself like then?
So a child in the classroom, which is why often girls don't get diagnosed in school, it could just be somebody who's classed as a daydreamer.
Right.
Who could do better if they just tried harder.
So it just doesn't look like they're really caring about what's going on. Oh, interesting.
So, but what happens is, you know, you're having these thoughts, so that means you've missed the instruction from the teacher, you don't know what's going on. And when you've experienced that, I think, you know, and it can be for boys as well, but some children stop, you know, especially if they get criticised, and they don't realise what's going on themselves. You know, a lot of the children that I work with who have ADHD or are going through the ADHD process, they don't understand ADHD themselves and how it impacts them.
Let alone educating the people around them.
Yeah, it's like you just get a diagnosis and then
that's it.
Invariably it's kind of get on with it.
It's on you to figure out.
Yeah. Read the books. There's a lot of criticism around social media and ADHD, but I think it's amazing because, you know,
it's something.
Yeah, it's something, and you have to be careful about what you take on board.
Yeah, amazing. Because obviously, one of my questions I always ask is what's next, but yours is an organic what's next, is it?
Yeah,
you're on a path.
Just carrying on as I am and continuing to grow, continuing with the self-awareness and values and boundaries, and, you know, these are all new ways of me being and new ways of me seeing myself. And the spiritual journey I just love. It's just throws up revelations all the time, and I love that. Yeah, I really love that. So, watch this space.
Woohoo! And we'll put all your social things on, the stuff in here so people can see. Right, conscious of time. Mm-hmm. My 3 final questions, as always, because otherwise you and I are just going to sit here and chat forever. Yeah. And it's probably not going to be interesting to anyone other than us, is it? Because we're just going to waffle on. What life advice would you give your younger self?
Younger self? Oh, gosh.
Any version of your younger self, but...
To say how you feel. Not to keep it in, because maybe if I'd let on that I was unhappy when I was unhappy, to be yourself, to be yourself.
And be aware of what
you don't have
what lights your fire, what doesn't, that kind of thing.
If you're trying to be somebody that you're not, that's not right. There's something amiss. That's not the way, you are precious for who you are.
Yeah.
And that is more than enough. And be you, don't try and be somebody else.
What advice do you think your older self would give you?
Like future self?
Like 20, 30 years in the future. What advice would she give you now?
You're doing fine as you are. Keep on and keep believing in yourself.
She'd be proud of you.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, then the final question is always life advice or a mantra just to throw out into the world. If, as I always say, if Marie Helen had a t-shirt, what would it say? It doesn't have to be one thing, it could be a couple of things, but it can be what you've already said.
Yeah, I think something about it's that loving yourself is important. It's not selfish, it's you have to love yourself to be able to love other people.
And accept yourself.
Yeah, and really, I think that's the thing, that self-love awareness, and that I didn't have, had very little of it before. So trying to think that as just loving yourself isn't selfish. It's not selfish to love yourself.
Yeah, but you're completely right though. If you can't love and accept yourself, you're not going to be able to open your heart out to other people, are you? So that's great advice. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much, Marie Helen.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
If you would like to hear more about this chat, see some pics and read about how to get started in this industry and or this role, then please go to our website www.thiswomanswork.org. The link is on this podcast page and across our socials. Sincere thanks.